everyone, my name is Stephanie Hester, and today's lesson activity presentation is on theme, the message of the story. For our reading standard, I focused on determining the theme of a story, drama, or poem from details in the text, which is really important because I have a graphic organizer to support students on how to do this. For our language standard and objective, we're focusing on acquiring and using accurate and grade-appropriate academic domain-specific vocabulary, which we will talk about, using a KWL and guiding students' thinking and learning. For our enduring understanding, I would speak to students about how authors write for a variety of reasons, and we're going to be focusing on fictional texts and how authors are typically writing for others to learn about a valuable life lesson in fictional texts. Our essential question that I would present to the students is, how can I use story elements like the problem, solution, to help determine the theme or message of a story? So for the lesson outline, we are going to focus on what is theme. And we're going to use a KWL chart to have students brainstorm what they know about fictional stories and what they would want to know. For our introduction, I have a video on what is theme, along with a graphic organizer and some anchor charts. For our practice, we're going to listen to the story Not Your Typical Dragon, and for our practice, we're going to do a guided reading with questions on the shepherd boy and the wolf. And for our practice activity, which can be done independently or in partners, it's a task card with a story, and students determine what the theme is. For our closing, we go back to our KWL and revisit what we've learned about fictional stories and what we can add to our KWL chart. So first, what do you know about fictional stories? So here you would have students turn and talk with a partner. I would typically walk around the classroom and write down, as I'm hearing students talk about what they know about fictional stories. For example, stories all have characters. Some stories might include animals that talk, problem, solution, things like that. And once we're finished with that, we talk about, okay, what do you want to know about fictional stories? Maybe, why an author writes. You can start prompting and guiding students to think about other factors about fictional stories they might not have come up with. And here's where I would present our anchor charts. So first I would talk about what is theme, and we would look at it as the moral or the lesson that the author wants us to learn and apply to everyday life. And some common themes: good versus evil, friendship, accepting others. And what we are going to look for throughout our reading is, what was the problem of the story? What did the characters learn? How did the characters grow? And over here on this side, I have common themes, the lessons or morals of the story. So don't be afraid to try new things, be yourself, honesty, and down below they have descriptors of what it is. And in my classroom, we do a book of the day, so we typically always talk about what is the theme or message of a story every single day, and this board is presented and students can choose from them in the beginning, and then later on students sometimes find themes that aren't listed on this chart, and that is okay. It's also common for students to come up with multiple themes as long as they're using that text evidence to support their answer. So here's the video we're going to listen to. The video in this story, the video talks about what is theme and how the theme can help us understand the author's message. And then it goes into a little example about Arthur and his family visiting the beach, and how Arthur pretends like he's drowning and his mom and dad come. And he gets a little giggle out of it, and then he pretends again that he's drowning, and again his family comes and rescues him. But then on the third time, he really is drowning and he's struggling to stay afloat, and his dad isn't sure to believe him, but his dad did see a wave that might have knocked him out. And so it's always important to be honest. And so in the video it talks about what is theme and why the author is making sure that we understand about honesty and why is it important to be honest. So here's the theme handout. So I would at first start modeling what I want this to look like before I give each student a handout. And I would use this on the board. You can project it or, have it on an Elmo. If you want students to have an individual copy as well, you can do that. Maybe put them in their reader's response notebooks. But I use this as a graphic organizer so we can write down our evidence from the text to support our thinking. So first, there is a book called Not Your Typical Dragon, and before we begin, we talk about what is a problem, what is a solution, what does destroy mean, what is a knight, what does the word typical mean, and diet. So we would really focus on those words because they're going to be part of the story, and problem and solution are also part of our language standard and how we can use those to help us relate them back to the theme. So in this story, the main problem that Crispin faces is that he's a dragon and he's supposed to breathe fire, but he can't. And so throughout the book, he continues to try to breathe fire, but he breathes things like bubbles. And he's unable to breathe fire like his family. And he feels like a disappointment in that he's not a typical dragon. And so as I'm going through the story, we're filling out the graphic organizer. What is the problem? And we talk about, how Crispin faces this problem, but he's also able to blow other things, which can be helpful. And so when we're finished, we're going to share what is the theme of the story. And we post this board up at the top, and students have partner discussions on what they think the theme of the story could be. We can even guide students to determine, could the theme be yourself, or could the theme be don't be afraid to try new things. And this is the lesson practice for guided reading activity. This is the Shepherd Boy and the Wolf. Before we begin this story, we go over what the words doll, amuse, and pasture are, and we would explain how these words are going to come up in the story, and they're going to help us understand what the character is feeling and thinking. So I took a screenshot. It's a fable, and you can also lead this into your discussions about what is theme, and students and the teacher are reading this together. You can either provide a copy for each of the students, or you can provide one just up on the overhead for all to see. In the beginning, we talk about that word doll, which is right here, and the word amuse, which is right here, and the word pasture, which is right here. And so that's really important because in the beginning, we talk about how the problem of the story is that he's really bored. And so in order to amuse himself, he starts to tell a lie about a wolf attacking the villagers because his master had told him that the villagers would come and help take the wolf away. Well, he found it very funny and he decided to do it again. And then on the third time, he actually did see a wolf, and the villagers did not run and help him. And so the Aesop fable typically ends with the theme right there embedded, and students already are told the theme. Liars are not always believed, even when they speak the truth. So here's the theme handout that I would present to the students as we're reading the story. And as we're reading the story, we're going to stop and talk about what is the problem of the story. And our first piece of evidence would be that he finds life dull on the farm, on the pasture, and we would write in that he was bored and he found things dull right here. And so we would write dull, we would write bored. You can even write down problem over here, but really using that language that we've been practicing, giving synonyms for what dull is, and having students really understand how the character was feeling and what might have led him to do the things that he did. So then I would use transition words in between because that's also the language of the standard. So we know that the problem, so what happened next or then, are transition words that I would use. And then we would talk about how he lied. And we would write, he would told a lie and he thought it was funny, and the villagers didn't think it was funny, so they left. And then we would talk about what happened last, and we would, write last here. And then he lied again, but the villagers did not come running. They didn't think it was funny and didn't believe him. And of course, the message of the story is that liars are not to be believed, even when they're telling the truth, and we would write that down here. So after the story, we would answer the big idea theme, the theme sentence, and we would talk about how we can also write our own theme. And we want students to really understand how to look at questions like this, and so this is really the gradual release, because in their independent practice, they're going to see these choices, and they're going to see this writing activity. So as a class, for total participation activity, I would ask students to hold up the number of fingers. So if you think the theme is accepting others, hold up 1 finger. If you think it's being brave, hold up 2, being dishonest 3, and having hope 4. So that would be for the first part of the questions. For the second part of the questions, it's a theme sentence. So which sentence matches the theme best? And again, you can do a total participation activity where you can have students raise their hand for 1, 2, 3, or 4. You can even have students get up and go to 4 corners. If they believe, being brave can help you overcome challenges, they would go to corner 1, and so on. And for writing your own theme sentence, I would model this here. You can use sentence starters, but I would want to have students talk amongst their groups or partners or elbow partners about what did they learn about being dishonest. And so we can write that as a class right here. So being dishonest makes other people not trust you. Being dishonest is not a good character trait because others don't believe you. Basically, we're putting the theme sentence into our own words here. And these are the task cards. I chose one, and this is something that I would do in small groups. There will be several task cards. It'll end up being a station, but this is partner practice before they get to independent. If you would prefer them to work independently to kind of get an idea of a little bit of a formative assessment, you can do that. I typically have students read in partners, and I have them read it twice. So they would get these theme passages, and I would put them in partners. You can partner them with one fluent speaker and a not so fluent speaker, however you choose to partner them, but reading it twice and speaking. And even though it's not listed, this is also about listening. We're listening for fluency, we're listening for understanding, and the other partners can help out with words that they might struggle with. So as they read the passage once, then the partner reads it, and then they discuss the answers to the questions, which we will discuss on the next slide. So this story is about Kim not wanting a baby brother, and her parents are talking about, that the baby's coming, whether she likes it or not, and she finds out, oh, I can be a big sister, and I'll be important, and I can teach him new things. So maybe it's not so terrible after all. So on the next slide, students can fill out, so they would have this graphic organizer in their groups. You can even laminate these so they can erase them and they can keep them. You can have individual copies so that you can collect them for a grade. The options are really endless here, but I would have students fill out the evidence of what they think was the problem in the story, what did the character learn, how did the character grow, going back to those identifying factors and what they think the message is. And then the task card questions are the same thing. We're going to answer in 3 big ways. The students would select, of course, that this one's about acceptance, and there are ways that we can accept things because it helps us feel important. So feeling important can help people accept change more easily. And then students would write their own theme. So acceptance is important because change is always going to happen. You can support students and go around with this if you need to, but we do have guided lessons where we can change what each student is doing based on their language level proficiency. So at the end of the lesson, we would talk about what do you know about fictional stories and what they learned. So have them turn and talk what they learned with their partner, and hopefully they'd come up with authors have hidden messages that aren't explicitly said, and these are called themes, and themes of the story can be found by looking for clues. They can relate back to inferences. Authors always make you infer, and so that's a lesson that students have been taught, and you have to infer a theme. The theme handout for this presentation is on this slideshow as well, just in case anybody wanted it, but I will put it in a separate document. The layout of step-by-step what you can do, the standards and objectives are also listed on there. The theme handout for the graphic organizer is here, and you can even use the theme anchor charts that I used at the beginning as well. So modifications for varying levels of English language proficiency, I chose emerging, beginning, intermediate, and advanced. So they have similarities, but it is very step procedure, so you'll see more writing towards the end and more selected choices here narrowed down. So for emerging students, provide fiction, theme, problem, solution in their first language, define for them, provide read aloud accommodations for each text. You can even slow down the videos. Also, you can do Google Translate does a really great option of taking a picture and translating it. I had a student from Colombia, and he had a really great educational background, so he could access higher level texts if we translated them first, but I know that's not an option in every district, but that option is always available. I would also provide a master template copy of each of the theme cards, and I would just give them selected choices. So if I know the theme is being brave, I would maybe put being brave and overcoming challenges as their choices, and they would kind of have to read to find out which one they think it is and have that discussion with their partners. I would also partner them with someone who is more English proficient, and so they can possibly help translate if they speak the same language, but otherwise they can hear a fluent reader read the story, and they can have that conversation with them. For beginning, I would provide the same thing, dictionary definitions of theme, fiction, problem, solution in that student's first language. I would partner them with native English speakers or more proficient speakers, and I would provide them just one copy of the master theme cards for them to point to and select to identify the theme there. For intermediate learners, I would provide students with the graphic organizer. This way they're really writing down their ideas and going back into the text. For beginning and emerging, you can just have them underline their text evidence, but here I would really want them to write it down and focus on translating it into short phrases or words so that they can show their evidence and their thinking. I would also give them the same thing. I would have the theme card individual available in their reader's response notebooks, and I would have them write the sentence at the bottom of the handout. For advanced students, they're going to use the theme graphic organizer, but I would have them write a paragraph. So taking their 3 points of evidence, using the problem, solution, how the characters grow, and what they learned, I would have them write paragraphs using that graphic organizer to really guide them. And so they could talk about the theme of the story is in the story, this happened, the character learned this, and I think the theme is this, and they could really expand on their thinking and writing skills. And that's the end of our presentation. I hope you enjoyed